Good afternoon and welcome to our analysis, a first level analysis of IIFT which has just been concluded. So, how was the paper? As most students would say, the biggest change in this year's paper was that the DI section was reasonably easy compared to every previous IIFT paper that I have seen so far. As you would have expected, there were four sections with two sections having subsections also. So, DI and LR were part of one section. VA and RC were part of one section, followed by GK and Quant. There were 123 questions in all, with 100 marks for the entire paper. GK had the least marks per question, that's zero point 0.5, whereas the other sections had 0.75 or 1 mark per question. Let me move on to the initial sections. LR, in fact, was, I would say, qualitatively challenging. There were some very easy sets like the one on people sitting in an hexagon, or the syllogism question, or some of the other single questions. But there were also a few challenging questions like the star based on which you had to find analogies, or the set on say, 8 doctors arriving at different times, or the set on 2 tribes, etc. So these were slightly challenging sets. On the other hand, DI was extremely simple, which means that you could have actually solved 3 DI sets out of 4 and covered the entire sectional cutoff for LRDI through DI rather than LR. Coming to the VA and RC section, the RCs were reasonably okay. You could have solved 2 sets out of 4 and moved on to VA. VA did throw up a few surprises, and I would say it was slightly on the tougher side compared to RC. The first big surprise was the crossword. A lot of people would have been very surprised to just see the crossword in their paper, and their first reaction would be, oh, what's this? You had to identify 4 words which would fit into the crossword, and based on that, you had to answer 3 to 4 questions. Then there was the typical antonym question, but with a twist, where you had an entire match the column and you had to fill that. You had words where the source language, basically its etymology was given, and you needed to find out whether the word is derived from French or Latin or Greek or whatever. So these questions were not very easy to tackle. However, the fill in the blanks were relatively easy. The paragraph jumbled sentences were again relatively easy. So these questions should have been targeted to crack the IIFT sectional in VA and RC. I would say GK was fairly simple because the questions, there was a good mix of static and dynamic GK. So if you were well read on affairs of the last few months, you could have answered a lot of questions. There were 4 to 5 tabular questions, most of which were answerable. One of them was tricky, where there were just 3 entries on the left side and 9 to 10 entries on the right side. And then you just had to figure out which one matches on the left, unlike a typical match the column. Some questions were very easy in GK as well. Since GK had a total score of 12 and a half, I don't think that the cutoff for GK will go beyond 3 or 4 marks. Which means that if you answered even 10 questions properly, you should be in with a very good chance. Finally, coming to Quant. I would say fairly easy question section with a mix of some tough questions in between. But there were some sitters which could have been easily attempted. Like questions, there was a standard question on ball being dropped from a height, the question on logs, question on inequalities. Then there were a few geometry based questions which are based on standard formula. So these questions definitely should have been attempted. Right now, I would say on the whole, this was a simpler IIFT paper, or I would say as simple as last year. The cutoff should not go too high. I would expect, right now, prima facie, if you ask me, I would expect the cutoff to be somewhere in the late 40s, around 47, 48. But please don't accept it as gospel truth right now. We will be conducting a thorough analysis of the paper today. We'll come up with the answer key in a few hours, and then you'll get a much better idea of what the cutoff can be. So even though I am saying it's 47, 48 right now, a few hours down the line, if we do come up with a revision in our plans, we or in the analysis of the paper, I might revise my opinion and say it's 45 or it's 50. But right now 47 seems to be the number for me. So hope you had a great paper, and just visit the site in some time and you should be able to access your score once you start putting in your answer key. Thank you.